Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Good.
Yep, you're good.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here today talking about things that I'm very, very passionate about. And I'm really grateful that you are all here. My intention is that you get a lot of things that you can utilize for yourself and your clients out of this presentation. It's going to be more experiential than just a clinical grand rounds education. It's really about experiences and tools that you can use for yourself and others. So I'm just getting my share up. And all right. All righty. So today's subject, stress relief and mental self-care, which I call mental fitness mostly. I kind of go back and forth between mental self-care, mental fitness, and mental wellness. For those of us in the healthcare field, tips and techniques for decreasing stress and enhancing your mental well-being. So a little bit about me. I've been a chiropractor for 32 long years, and from the very beginning, I felt that stress and its repercussions were the greatest health factor. And that was before anybody was really talking about it at that time. I mean, that was a long time ago. And excuse me, I need a sip of water. I've been teaching about it since the mid-90s. I taught my first stress relief class. It was a 4-week class for adult education in Newington, Connecticut, where my practice was at the time in 94 or 5. I've had lots of training in many forms of healing. And one of the things I specialize in is really looking at all the different aspects that affect our health and wellness. So I'm not your typical chiropractor that's just a pain relief doc. I do a lot more than that. I specialize in trauma of all types from the beginning, especially childhood trauma. I always attracted people who have had a lot of trauma, repetitive trauma, childhood trauma. And I've had specific training in mental self-care and mental fitness. So this you guys read, this was on the emails that Darcy sent out. This is what we'll be doing today. So let's start with stress. Can anybody relate to being stressed out? I bet you all can. So the Webster's definitions are a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension and may be a factor in disease causation. They really should change that to, and definitely causes most of the disease that we see in this country. Stress can also be a state resulting from a stress, especially one of bodily or mental tension. So we're going to start today with with our first stress releasing mental self-care exercise. So if everybody can please just close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. Put your feet on the floor. Take a couple of deep breaths. And just let whatever you were thinking about, whatever you were doing before, just let it go. Use your mind to focus on your breath.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Or are you not meditating? Because it seems like that's what they're doing right now.
Oh, I don't even have it up. I'm just logged in. So I get.
Can everybody please check if you're muted? Somebody, at least one person's not muted. Thank you. So taking a nice deep breath in and out, checking in with how your body feels right now, how your mind feels. And now just take 2 of your fingertips and rub them together in such a way that you feel the ridges of each finger when you do that. And just focus on that feeling between your fingers. And when your mind wanders, just say, thank you, my busy mind. Please come back and help me just feel that sensation of what's happening between my fingers. And again, I'm going to ask, can everybody please check if you're muted? Thank you so much. And again, with your mind wandering, bringing that feeling back to your fingertips and noticing how that feels. And now take both of your hands and rub your palms and fingers together and just notice how that feels. Remembering to breathe. And to bring your focus back to that feeling in your hands. Now drop your hands and just take another breath. Open your eyes. So that's one, that was probably 2 or 3 minutes, one activity you can do that actually decreases your stress. And if you just check in with your body again, do you feel any different than you did when we started that? And that's one of the mental fitness exercises. And just so you know, I will be sending a document to Darcy to send out to you that will have all the different exercises and activities that we talk about today in them. So you'll have access to that without having to rewatch the video. So stress, as we know, is a natural response or reaction to a stimulus. And it's a good thing. It's a natural response that is essential for our health and well-being. And it comes from both good and bad things. So for instance, if you look at stress meter and what stresses people, one of the biggest things, one of the biggest things is getting married. And we all know about the bad stresses. We don't need to belabor that point. But it's good when it's quick. It's meant to, you have a stimulus, you respond to it, the stimulus ends, and you come out of that stress response. However, that's not what's happening in our culture for the most part. Stress is ongoing for most people, long-term or repetitive. And once you get into that cycle of stress and it becomes more and more of a habit, it gets harder and harder to break and go to a resting state. So there's many different types of stress. We have mental, spiritual. Spiritual to me is like not being in line with your purpose or your beliefs or your values. Work and school stress, we all know about that. Relationships of all types, personal, professional, your kids' teachers, et cetera, all types of relationships. Birth trauma. I had this big time. I had to really work on that. I was in an incubator for the first 2 weeks I was alive. So I've done a lot of work around that stress. Chemical stress. So chemical doesn't mean just chemicals in the air or in food. It's also drugs, supplements that aren't very good. It's eating an unhealthy diet. So a lot of processed foods. I think the toxins in the air are a huge part of that at this point. Social stresses, childhood stress. I find, I mean, as I said, this is something I work with a lot, and most people have some kind of stress that comes from their childhood. And sometimes it's relatively minor, sometimes it's huge. And then of course, emotional. I'm not going to do a lot around the physiology and neurophysiology around stress because that's something that that you could look up easily, but here's a overview. So it activates the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which increases your cortisol. So that's your hormonal stuff. And glucagon decreases insulin, actually first increases insulin because the cortisol produces an increased blood glucose, which makes insulin pump out more. And long-term stress, it starts decreasing your insulin and creating insulin resistance. Suppressed hormones increase inflammation. I've done talks on the connection between stress and inflammation, and they're so tied together. And inflammation is a huge issue in our health. And of course, that alters behavior, suppresses your immune system, and causes disease. And then there's a lot of cardiovascular aspects as well. So this is what the stress hormones, some of the things it does in our body. Now, if you think about this, stress is meant to be, it's a response to some kind of threat. And it got developed before we had a bigger brain like we do now. And it's an automatic response that makes you be able to act quickly. So if you think about that, it's your breath increases, your digestion slows down because you need the energy to be put into action. Your blood flow to your skeletal muscles increase again, so you can act. Your heart rate speeds up to pump all that blood. The blood sugar levels increase so that you have the energy to do all of this. And the blood pressure in arteries increase and pupils dilate. So just think for a minute, if this is all happening on a chronic basis and you can't stop this cycle, this is not a healthy state to be in. You don't really have the opportunity to rest, relax, digest. Here are some of the many diseases that have a relationship to stress. And I would put stress and inflammation in here. We have inflammatory conditions. It is estimated that 85 to 95% of illness in this country has a link, either a direct result of stress or a link to stress. That's huge. So, and many different types, cancer, endocrine hormonal issues, because of that, the insulin resistance, it's a predecessor to type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. This surprises a lot of people, but you just don't have what it takes to be able to nourish your brain properly. Obesity, we'll be talking more about that because I know that this group had asked to hear about stress and its impact on weight. But I wanted to cover stress overall as well. PTSD, asthma, GI issues. This is a huge thing because it does cause, when you start having gastrointestinal issues, it impacts your stress. It's very stressful and it's often an inflammatory condition. So that starts to go around and around and around. And depression and anxiety, which we know has become a very big issue in our culture. So here is some of the relationship between stress and weight gain. So you increase stress, then cortisol increases. You get increased blood sugar and insulin resistance, sugar cravings, and leptin sensitivity. Leptin is a hormone that tells you that you're full. So it's very easy to overeat and you'll feel hungry when your body has had enough food, and fat storage as well. So that chronic stress leads to a chain reaction that causes weight gain that actually becomes harder and harder to release. And a lot of this fat storage is in the belly. So what you have to do about this is really decrease your stress and possibly get some help to reverse that stress cycle. So stress relief for weight management is, as I said, decrease your stressors. Excuse me. Mental self-care, which we are going to do a lot of this today, and mindful eating. So most of us just swallow down our food. If you take time to feel yourself chewing, really taste the food, take a breath between mouthfuls, it makes a very big difference, because that in and of itself is a mental self-care activity, to eat that way. Slow and steady wins the race. What I say, and I have this later in the presentation as well, is if you know wheat is bad for you, or the white things, sugar, white grains, white potatoes are bad for you. You know candy is bad for you. You know you eat too much meat. You don't eat enough vegetables, etc. Whatever your thing is pick 2 or 3 things that you can change that will relieve stress on your body, and as well as help you lose weight. That makes a gigantic difference. I love this one, pick your cheats. I've actually been on Weight Watchers for about 8 or 9 months. I was had a very stressful time in my life before coming back to Connecticut in November of 2019. So I put on the pounds, and I've really been dealing with that. So picking your cheats. So do I have potato chips? Yep. Do I have pizza? Yep. And I'm conscious about it though, and then I adapt. So I know I'm not going to eat just healthy food. So how am I going to choose to cheat when I cheat? This is a huge factor as well, because be kind to yourself when you mess up. Everybody messes up, and just beating yourself up is it just creates more and more stress, and the whole cycle starts over and over and over again. Find healthy comfort food. I like this one a lot too. So I discovered pretzels made out of butternut squash, and crackers made out of cauliflower, and stuff like that. And because I love crunchy, salty food. So that really helps me stay on pace. And then I feel good when I eat something that I'm craving, instead of feeling bad about it. And keep a food journal. So there's lots of ideas for decreasing stress, of course. Eating a diet of 70 to 80% lean proteins and veggies, organic if you can, any veggie will do. If you do 80% good in your diet and 20% not as good or conscious, you'll be in good shape. So, and it's not only for weight loss, but decreasing stress, because you'll be nourishing your body, giving it what it needs to regenerate, replenishing all the vitamins and minerals that get depleted when you're under chronic stress. A lot of water is a good thing to do. Most of us don't drink enough water. The amount of water you should be drinking is number of ounces, and that equals half your body weight. So if you weigh 140, you should be drinking 70 ounces of water. Any stress relieving activity, so like meditation, yoga, walking, and meditation, yoga, and walking. Let me slow down there. And this is very important. Anything that's fun for you. If you like hiking, if you like riding a bike, if you like going to the movies, if you like having a glass of wine with a girlfriend after work, all that actually reduces your stress. And anything that you're passionate about. It's very important. It's important to receive care from people who help those of us that are overstressed. So getting a massage. I work a lot with this, as I said. I think most people probably need some nutritional help as well, because when you're chronically stressed, you are so depleted, and it's hard to get it just from your food when you're really depleted. So that can be a good step. Therapist, of course, trauma specialist if that is something from your past that needs to be addressed. This is one of my favorite things to do, is exercise and body-centered movement and to make sound. So now we're going to go into another activity that will help relieve stress. We're going to do the body-centered movement. So again, if everybody can close your eyes, take a breath. Just feel your body. Feel where there might be some discomfort or tension. And just ask your body how it wants to move, and just start moving that way. If you can get up, that's fine too. It doesn't have to be big. It can be pretty minor. I don't know if you all can see me on your screens right now, but I'm doing it with you. So I'm feeling some tension here in my chest. And my body wanted to move back and forth like this to relieve that. And if you, again, anytime you do these types of things, your mind will wander, because it's what our minds do. It's very natural for our minds to do that. So just bringing your mind back to noticing your body and how does it want to move? How do you want to stretch? And now, as you're moving, make a little sound. It doesn't have to be big. Again, just keep moving. And you might want to be still and just breathe. That's fine too. Oh, that feels so good. So as I said, you can just wind down and take another breath. Notice how you feel. What I have found, these are two things: the body-centered movement and making sound are two of the most helpful things for decreasing stress, getting more centered in your body instead of your spinning mind. I beg people to do these things. I mean, beg. And the making sound part is hard for a lot of people. And of course, we were quiet because we're on a grand rounds, but roaring in your car driving to work is a great place to make a lot of sound. Yelling, screaming, noticing a place in your body, and maybe you have a place that has chronic pain, and letting yourself feel that and saying, well, what sound does that want to make? Or whatever it is. When people do this, it clears the stress, and it starts clearing the neurological patterns, so that the neurology behind chronic stress starts to change. It's really miraculous. So I highly encourage you guys playing with these things. And the body-centered movement, sometimes I want to put on really loud dance music and I just want to dance. Sometimes it's very quiet and I do yoga. Sometimes I stay seated. The key is to let your body tell you how to move. So if you're somebody that does yoga, don't just do yoga unless that's what your body is asking you to do. It takes some practice to just get tuned in with your body like that. But everything that we're talking about today around the mental self-care especially will help you do that. So on to the mental fitness. What's our time? Good. Mental fitness and mental self-care. I call it fitness because it really is like building a muscle where you can be more positive rather than negative in your mental state. And that's what mental self-care really is. So definition, as I said, your capacity to respond to life's challenges with positive rather than negative mindset. As we talked about earlier, we kind of have an automatic go-to of the negative because of the older parts of our brains. That stress response, it becomes an automatic. So it takes some work to build this mental fitness to change to more positive. Being able to do this has a huge effect on every area of our life, including our performance at work, performance with hobbies, performance, how you're showing up for your family. It really impacts that greatly. Health and wellness, a lot because of what we're talking about, how those negative cycles and breaking them are essential to being healthy and feeling well. And it also helps since I started doing this, it has helped me just feel better about myself, better about my life, seeing the positive things I'm doing more than the negative things that have happened or that are currently happening. That all has a tremendous impact. It leaves space for you to keep going and creating more and more positive. All types of relationships. One of the things I've seen is when people start to change their mental fitness and catch themselves and be able to go from a negative to a positive state, it's like their automatic triggers shift. It's like they're not just reacting in triggers. And happiness and satisfaction. Who doesn't want more happiness and satisfaction? I know I do. So this increasing your mental fitness, it really is as easy as shifting your mind from negative to positive. And it's been shown on functional MRI to grow the gray matter in the positive parts of the brain and shrink the gray matter in the negative parts of the brain. That's pretty powerful if you think about that. That means it disempowers the negative neurological pathways and empowers the positive neurological pathways. So much of this work comes from a system called positive intelligence that I've been studying. And it's research that has been based on positive psychology, neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and performance science. It was done by Shirzad Sharmin, who wrote this best-selling book, Positive Intelligence. The research comes from hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams, Stanford students, athletes, and like Olympic world-class athletes, like that level of athletes, and over 500,000 participants from 50 countries. So it's not just about the US, it's really very global what he's looked at here. And what else? So what he did is he looked at, I'm going to skip ahead here a minute. Oh, no, I'll wait to do that. I'm sorry. So the negative part of our brain, which we call the saboteurs. So it's all the characters in our heads that talk to us and make us go to the negative, the things that we feel or get triggered by over and over and over again. It's primarily in the brainstem and the limbic system and parts of the left brain. And then the positive or sage part of your brain is the middle prefrontal cortex, your empathy neurology circuitry, and parts of the right brain. The negative comes from that survival, fight or flight. That's the stress neurology. It motivates any kind of action through negative emotions, fear, stress, anger, and security. So if you get angry and take an action, it's most likely a saboteur, and obviously from the negative part of your brain. And it might generate some success, but not very much happiness. So a lot of us, it's like one of the saboteurs that we'll go over is the overachiever. And people say, well, the overachiever helps me achieve things, but it does so in a pressured way. So it might help you create some success, but it comes from a negative place and it won't help create much happiness. So the positive or sage part of the brain is thriving rest and relaxation neurology, or rest, relax, and digest. It's motivated through positive emotions, empathy, creativity, passion, and peace, and generates the highest success and happiness. So these are all things we can access. For instance, one of the things that I do when I notice I'm being very irritated at other drivers is I'll go, oh, they must have just wanted a prayer, or they must really be in a hurry. Let me just send them some energy, try and shift that around. So here are our saboteurs. This get us into the negative mental emotional cycles. This is the judge. Everybody has the judge. This can be judgment of yourself, judgment of others, or judgment of situations. And as I said, this is the primary saboteur for everybody. And then there's 9 others that come into play here. So controller, some of you may know, just think about what you think yours might be, or I'm sure you'll be able to identify some of the people in your life, what you think they are. Controller, hyperachiever, restless, stickler, pleaser, hypervigilant, avoider, victim, and hyper rational. This is the person that just thinks and thinks and thinks. One of my big ones is the avoider, because I don't like conflict. So I'd rather miss conflict, and that has caused some issues in my life because I'll, won't resolve things when they could be easily resolved. And if you go to positiveintelligence.com, which I will put on the sheet that I'm going to give to you, you can take an assessment that will tell you which of these saboteurs are your high saboteurs. Doing the exercises that we talk about really decrease the power of these, and really just working on 1 or 2, like I know my avoider comes up a lot. So if I can identify that, it helps decrease, and then do something about it, decrease its effect. It decreases the effect of all of them. So a lot of people think negative emotions are good for you. And I will say they do have their purpose. And it's a similar question to, is pain good for you? Pain can be an alert, like putting your hand on the stove, but you're not going to leave it there, dwelling on the heat. And negative emotions can be like that as well. So they're helpful to alert you that you're in that negative cycle. And then you can do something about it. So in general, staying in negative emotion, it hurts your ability to see clearly and respond in sage mode, which is empathy, curiosity, creativity, or laser focused action. So each time you catch yourself and can shift that, take a breath, do the little finger exercise, it helps empower the places where I think most of us want to live, which is in positivity and with empathy, curiosity, creativity. and laser focused action. So the negative emotions are most often a saboteur. Now, coming from my background and yours as well, with the work that you all do, persistent or repeating negative emotions, of course, can be an indicator of past negative or traumatic experiences. I know the people that you work with, it's not so easy to break these cycles, and because they have such a buildup of things that have happened, gone wrong in their lives, et cetera, et cetera. So that it's very important to note that it's a sign of something bigger, and in the moment doing things to shift that can help while that person is seeking help and getting some healing to what's happened in their lives. So the how Shirzad came up with this system around the positive intelligence is he did factor analysis research, and what he found was that, so he looked at many different things that were out there, looked at those 500,000 people, et cetera, and he looked at what are the common factors that are at the root of having healthy mental fitness. And what he also looked at things like emotional intelligence work and NLP and different systems like that. And he looked at them and said, well, what are the common things? And what he found was that there were three main things that really help you make the kind of shift that we're talking about. So one is intercept the saboteurs. So another way of saying stop the negative thoughts. Mental self-command. So those are the types of activities and exercises that we've already started to do with rubbing your fingers together, and we're going to do more of that as well. And rubbing your hands together. You're going to get a long list of things you can do for that. And then the third is enhancing your sage or your positive part of your brain perspective and strengthening your inner sage. You can think of this as, that deeper, pure part of yourself. So with the negative thoughts and becoming a saboteur and negative thought interceptor, the most powerful thing is to just start noticing when you're in that mode. So catching yourself and noticing it, that in and of itself starts to change the cycle. And then labeling it, saying, okay, I'm in negative self-talk, or I'm in my saboteur mode. Let any judgment of being in that mode go, because a lot of us will, I know I've done this, and many of my clients will say, oh, I did it again, darn it. I keep going into that mode. That's terrible, and that just feeds the negative cycle. So you can label that as well. Oh, I'm judging myself. And then refocus your energy to something positive by doing any of the self-command activities. So these are some of the things that you can say to yourself when you catch yourself. I mean, that old negative pattern, this is my judge talking. It's a lot of people like to name their judge, give it a name. So mine is, oh, that's my judgmental SOB. And I do say SOB, not all the way out. Oh, that's just my judgmental SOB talking, not my sage. There you are again, victim. I expected you to show up, and then refocus. And then there's many other things you might be able to think of that will diffuse those thoughts. So then you can move on to one of the self-command activities, which is what we're going to talk about next. So increasing your self-command, that's building your mental muscles or building mental fitness, because it really is like building a muscle. Every time you do a self-command activity, whether it's one I show you or one you do on your own, it builds that positive neurology and diffuses some of the negative physiology. And the research showed that if people did this 12 to 15 minutes a day for 6 to 8 weeks, that it makes a gigantic shift in the functional MRI studies that they've done. And this is really important for that performance that we talked about as well, because how many of you have gone to a seminar, been really inspired, received some coaching, learned something from your health practitioner that you use for a while, and then it starts to fizzle out? Because at first you're very inspired. It's very inspiring and you start doing it. But most of us have a default where we start falling off and falling off and falling off. And that is primarily because we don't have a strong enough mental fitness. We don't have enough of us in the positivity to keep that going, to really keep that going. So, you know what, we're going to do another activity for a moment again. So again, just close your eyes. There's somebody, I think, who's not muted. If everybody can recheck that again, please. So now I want you to just focus on your feet. Again, ask your mind to feel that. And feel the pressure of your feet on the floor or inside your shoes. And wiggle, wiggle, wiggle your toes. See if you can feel every one of your toes. Now pay attention to your breath going in and out. In and out. And just notice how that feels. So self-command activity, it's really anything that helps focus your mind, particularly on any physical sensation. So rubbing your fingertips together like we did, noticing your chest or belly move as you breathe, just focusing on an area in your body even that feels tense, and just feeling it, letting yourself feel it. That's actually, I'm sure many of you know, that's a big technique in some of the trauma healing work, is helping your mind focus on what you're feeling in your body, and that breaks that stress cycle. So I like that one a lot. I use that one a lot. You can just listen to sounds around you. You can listen to music. If you are listening to music, it's about really listening, like focusing on the voice, focusing on a particular instrument etc. Listen to the farthest or the closest sound that you can hear, feeling your feet and wiggling your toes like we talked about. You can do this while you're walking and feel your legs, feel your feet, really look at the trees as you go by. I love to do this when I go for walks. In your car, you can focus on your breath while you're driving to work. So the third is our sage perspective and the inner sage. This is a tough one for a lot of people, is changing your perspective to be more positive. That's every outcome can be turned into a gift and or opportunity. Now, how it turns into a gift and or opportunity may take a while to understand. So this is things like, I had a great loss in my life, big, big, big. And I was in grief for a very long time and still go there sometimes. And I've always had a commitment in my life to find the best of any situation and to try. I was just wired that way to do things that way. And one of the biggest gifts that I received from that great loss is, first of all, it helped me really understand grief. And I've since volunteered at grief organizations. Many of my clients are in grief, so I really have an innate understanding of intuitive, I've experienced it, understanding of how that can affect somebody. And it's also made my compassion for somebody who's been through difficult things through the roof. And it has definitely made my work more powerful because people feel safe, they feel seen. So what's something that's difficult in your life that has happened that maybe you've had a hard time seeing anything positive out of it? And how can you start turning that into a gift? And it takes time sometimes to really understand that. And just asking is part of the process. Just asking, how can I see a gift in this? Doesn't change the situation, but it changes how it's inputting into your body and what neurology is supporting. So the sage perspective, we went over this a little earlier. It's in the same part of the brain that has positive emotions, helps you feel peace and calm. So getting more into a sage perspective helps bring these things to fruition for you as well. Clear-headed focus rather than being confused, and creativity. It's like this, even I think that just doing this process alone is upping our creativity, because it says, well, how can I look at this differently? You have to be really creative sometimes to find what it is. And being able to look at that big picture rather than the micros. So here's a question. A lot of people say, well, but there's bad things. This is bad. This is good or a gift. And, your answer is whichever you believe becomes true. So you can say something like, yeah, this was a very difficult situation. And how can I turn it into a gift? So it brings the focus to every single thing that happens has something that can be a positive. So these are some activities that I find really helpful about increasing your inner sage. So thinking about and writing down what you're grateful for, there's been research on that. I'm sure you're aware of how powerful that is, because that being in gratitude is 100% the positive part of your brain. And also for what brings you joy. I recommend that people write a list of everything that brings them joy and start putting on your calendar when you're going to do those things. Or you can do joy and what you're passionate about, and bumping up those activities in your life. Like I actually love doing stuff like this. So like writing the PowerPoint I love doing that. So it was really fun for me. And I really feel the difference this week of sitting down and doing this. Ask yourself, just how can I see this differently? How can I turn it into a gift or opportunity? And as I said earlier, I'm going to repeat this because it really is important that it may take time to feel that. It may take time to know that. And just asking yourself the question brings you into the positive part of your brain, into the sage part of your brain. This is another activity I love. I'll put this in more detail in the handout, which is to make a list. Break your life, however old you are, break your life into 5 equal sections. So if you're 50, that would be 10 years each. And in each one, write down the things that you remember happening, good and bad, in your life, the key things. And then write down, how have you grown? What are the things that, if you had if you had a boyfriend who hit you, what did you learn from that? How did you grow from having that understanding? Maybe how did you pick boyfriends differently after that? Those types of examples. It's very, very powerful to do that. And I highly recommend that everybody include COVID on that list. Like, what benefit have you gotten from it, from being able to work from home for a while, whatever it is, having more time with your family, not being so scattered, having more time to exercise and meditate, whatever it is, there's blessings in that. And I think for us in our culture to acknowledge that. And again, it's not saying that COVID isn't horrible, it is. And acknowledging the positives that you've received from it is something that will help you be less stressed, more in positivity, more patient with what's happening, et cetera, et cetera. So here's a little overview of what we've talked about. If you're feeling negative emotions, just stop. Just stop. I love, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. There's a Bob Newhart thing where he plays a therapist and he tells this person to, tell him all what's wrong, and they do, and anything else keeps doing that. And then he says, okay, are you ready for your therapy? And he says, just stop it. Just stop it. So every time I say this, I think of that. So if you're feeling negative emotions, stop. You're in negative thought saboteur mode, and acknowledge that. Do some of the self-command reps to quiet your saboteurs and activate your sage. So that's all those activities, and I'll clearly mark that on the handout that I'll give you guys and girls. Assume the sage perspective that every problem can be converted into a gift or opportunity. So just assuming that. I'm a big one for acknowledging it all. Like, yes, that was very difficult, and is a good word to use, not but, because it opens up more possibilities. And you can generate. So once you figure out what the gift or opportunity is, you can bump it up even more by using sage powers like empathy, curiosity. Like, that's one of the things I have, right, that I said for more people going through what I went through: curiosity, creativity, calm, clear-headed action. So here's the big question. Is it really possible to just shift from negative to positive response, even in tough challenges? And the answer to that, of course, you know what I'm going to say. Of course, yes, but it does take time and it takes practice. So like I said, 12 to 15 minutes a day of this type of work really makes a huge difference. So I would encourage you, if you have a 15-minute drive to work, you're good for the day if you do this while you're driving to work. or you take a bathroom break and you decide to take some deep breaths and notice the breath. So it's the commitment and practice is important, I will say. So here are some of my rules. I'm not a big rule person, but these are important for decreasing stress and increasing mental wellness. Be easy on yourself. Your mind will wander. You'll forget to stop the negative thoughts. You'll forget that you weren't going to eat cake today, etc. You'll have soda instead of water. You didn't exercise for a week. You know, all those things. We all do that. We all do it. So forgive yourself and say that's normal. And the key is just getting back on. Like I said earlier, slow and steady wins the race. This is also a very big one. I highly recommend this for all of you on anything you're trying to change in your life. Decide what small change, baby steps. It's like a pebble in the pond. You know, my logo is a pebble in the pond because you drop that pebble and it has repercussions. So what are some small 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you're comfortable with, small changes that you would like to make that you will do most of the time? You won't do it all the time because that would be abnormal. Unless you're a really, maybe the hyperachievers out there might, but that's not me. So, but most people, you'll mess up, like I said. So, so what small changes will you do, say 90% of the time? And then as you incorporate those, make more changes. You know, even for me, when I started Weight Watchers, it took me about a month to really eliminate, you know, eat the way I really wanted to start eating, because it was a big change. It was a really big change. So the more you do, the better it is. I promise you, you will see the changes over time. So again, 15 minutes a day, and the activities can be broken up throughout your day. So 1 or 2 minutes make a difference. Here's some of the times, other than what I've mentioned, that you can do this. In the shower, during a meeting. This is important, and we're going to practice this in our last exercise time, which is coming right up. A lot of people ask about these mental fitness stuff and how it's different than meditation, because when you're in meditation, most people can quiet their minds, at least some, excuse me, and be in a more positive mental state. But you're off by yourself. You're not living your life. You're not having somebody cut you off. You're not being yelled at by your 15-year-old, you know. So a meeting, a project you did, you know, you notice that you made a big mistake and you're in a meeting. So when in those times, how can you change that? And that's one of the things I love about this type of work, is that you can do it anytime, anywhere. So while driving, walking into work. I know you all walk into work, right? So you can feel the weight of your whatever you're carrying in your arms. You can listen to your footsteps. You can notice how your legs feel while you're walking your dog, putting on makeup, taking a bathroom break, while eating lunch. I like to listen to the water in the shower because I love the sound of running water. So, okay, so we are going to go into our last activity, and this one's going to be a little longer because I really want you to expose you all to all the different things you can do and give you a physical experience of it. So hopefully that you all will be able to do that, or maybe if you are kind of half working and half listening, maybe you can go back and do this. And one of the things I am working on is getting some of these activities up on my YouTube channel, so I can share that with you as well. So this time I would like you to keep your eyes open and look at something in front of you, whether it's the screen or something else. I'm looking at all my drums on the shelf over there. And just really notice the textures that you're seeing. The colors that you're seeing. Just really absorb what you're looking at. Let yourself focus 100% on that. And again, I'm going to say this over and over again. When your mind wanders, like I'm hearing sirens go off, so I'm distracted by that. Just refocus, ask your mind. I'm a big advocate of talking to your mind, saying, okay, mind, thank you, you're so busy. Please help me focus. Because your mind really is what's doing that. And now let your vision go a little bit fuzzy so that you're able to keep your eyes open, but have your primary focus be on some other sensation. So as you're doing that, put your hand on your belly and just feel, keeping your eyes open with the soft focus, feel your belly as you breathe in and it expands, and you breathe out and it goes down. So again, refocusing. Every time you notice your mind wander and you bring it back, actually builds the muscle. So it's not the best thing in the world to not be able to keep the focus, but it's also not the worst, and it's also not the worst thing. It's actually still feeds your positive. Now put your hand on your heart. So that activity, breathing with your hand on your belly, or even just paying attention to your breath, is something you could easily do in a meeting or a conflict, or when you're super busy at work and you're feeling stressed and you're trying to get something done. So hand on your heart now. See if you can feel your heartbeat. Sometimes it's a little hard to feel, so you might have to press your hand a little harder. If you can't necessarily feel your heartbeat, you can just feel the pressure of your hand over your heart. Feeling your heartbeat, bringing your mind back when it wanders. Now just dropping your hands on your lap. This is another thing you can do in a meeting. Just feel the texture of whatever you're wearing under your hands on your lap. Feel the temperature of that. Now just rest your hands and just feel the weight of your arms on your hands on your lap and your arms wherever they are. Feel your back against the chair. And feel your bottom on the chair. Now listen to the ambient sound that's all around you. Again, just refocusing when your mind wanders, when you start paying attention to something else in your body, or start thinking about something. Now, listen to the thing that is furthest away. And now listening to what is closest. You haven't listened to your breath going in and out yet, go ahead and do that. Now just touch your head. Feel the texture of your hair. Mine is very frizzy. Again, just refocusing. Touch your forehead. This is something you could do while driving. Driving with one hand. You know, put my glasses on, so I'm gonna go ahead and feel my glasses under my eyes and just noticing how that feels, just paying attention to the physical sensation. And then your cheeks, nose, putting your fingertips right under your nose and noticing the temperature of the air as you breathe in and out. And then touching your lips, which for most people is very sensitive. Touching the rest of your face, jaw and chin. Just noticing the sensation of that. Now, go ahead and close your eyes if you'd like. Again, just breathing in and out, noticing your breath, noticing how you feel right now. That was about 10 minutes. All right, and opening your eyes again, bringing yourself back to the present moment, to our presentation. And that's it. So I really want to thank you all so much. We're going to open up to questions in a moment here. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, I will put that on the sheet that I give to Darcy, and I'll put this as well, thepositiveintelligence.com. There's a lot of information on that site, as well as being able to go and take the Saboteur's questionnaire. So, any questions or comments? And Darcy, how do you usually do that? Do people just speak up, or do people raise their hands?
People usually just speak up.
Okay.
Yeah. I had one question for you. First of all, I thought this was great. It's a real lesson for all of us, I think, to take some time, which we don't do enough of. And I think some of us, including myself, were kind of uncomfortable a little bit with some of the actions. So that's going to take some training, I think, too. However, a lot of these folks, you know, they, on a day-to-day basis, they get bombarded by a lot of outside pressures, even verbal abuse, coming from various sources. And it can be, you know, what do you do in that sense when you're, you know, listening and you're being yelled at? Let's say patients often yell.
Right.
So,
I'm sure.
So you're being yelled at, and how do you maintain? And I know these guys have a lot of training on that, but maybe more so even for me, how do we maintain composure and
Right.
keep what am I trying to say here? Keep focused on what we really need to be focused on, not being thrown off by
Right.
all these outside. What do you think?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say one of the reasons I gave a lot of different things is because you don't have to do the ones you're not comfortable with. There's many, many things you can do, and that's part of the beauty of it. It's really just about focusing on a physical sensation, whether it's hearing, you know, touch, you know, there's many, many ways to do it. Just your breath, noticing your breath. So that's part of the reason that I wanted to show you many different things. And, you know, like everything, all you can do is the best you can. So catching yourself when somebody's yelling at you and knowing that you're being really reactive and saying, okay, I'm being really reactive, and starting to remember, notice that, okay, I'm being triggered. How can I calm myself down? Okay, let me just stand here during the interchange and take a deep breath. And just notice your breath going in and out as all that's happening. And as I said, it's hard to do at first. It is. And the more you practice it and intend to do it, you know, like I'm a big one for setting intentions for my day or the week or whatever, you know, intending to catch yourself more and more, and then doing some of those simple things, you know, rub your hand up and down your leg and just feel that for a minute while whatever's happening around you is happening. And you do grow stronger with it. It's easier to catch, and it's easier to shift how you feel. And it does take practice. So if people do start doing that, and I hope you do, please try not to feel frustrated if you don't get an immediate shift, or that it takes a while before you really start feeling more and more the benefits. So part of that is practicing it when you're not in that situation. It'll help you recognize when you're not in that state.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else? Well, I want to thank you all so much for being here and for your attention. It's very delightful for me to be able to share some of this, and I really hope you start utilizing it. And I know so many of you are trained therapists and you have many, many, many skills. And I hope this is gave you some additional skills, not only for yourself, but for your clients, that can be really beneficial and really help them calm down enough so that you can get at some of the deeper stuff that's going on with them. So I'm not sure how your system works 100%. So, you know, I don't know, Darcy, if a part of the possibility when that's happening with somebody and they're just yelling, maybe some of the stuff can help calm them down. You know, it's up to everybody's discretion to learn how to use it for themselves and their clients. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.